Good morning. This is VirtualPBX admin training. Got a slightly early start here, so I'll give people a minute or so to join. The training lasts about an hour and a half to hour 45, depending on load times, or if I make a mistake. We do record the trainings, so you can always come back and watch it at your leisure or when it's more convenient. Also, this allows you to send the link to other staff members who may need to become admins on your Dash account. This also means you can go back and see previous recordings if you need to, or if there ends up being a technical issue and I can't continue the training. Something else I keep in mind is every other Thursday, one of my colleagues runs our business SMS webinar series, right? So basically covering like SMS registration and some of the do's and don'ts and whatnot. Those are linked in the show notes. There's a link that basically gets you to the whole series. You can then click on each one that you want to, as well as get notified for the next one, which will be not this Thursday, but the following. So that'll be the 29th of June. Just as a heads up, we will not be having our normal training on Tuesday, the 4th of July, in observance of the U.S. Independence Day holiday. I think that covers all the administrative details, so let's go ahead and get started. On the screen here, you should see our Dash login page. You can get there by going to dash.virtualpbx.com. To get logged in, we need 3 pieces of information. The first is your email address. This is your unique identifier. It should be typed in all lowercase letters. Next up is your password, which is case sensitive, which should have been emailed to you. And then lastly, we need your account name, which is typically it's your business name, right, or company name. Now, if you have trouble logging in, or let's say you didn't get the email for whatever reasons, then down here towards the bottom right, just above the sign-in bar, right, we forgot your info link. You can click on that. We're still going to need that email address. Oops. Helps to highlight the right thing. And then one of the two of the following, right? So we need either the account name, right, which is typically the easiest for people to enter, or a phone number that's on the account, and that's a customer-facing phone number. So you enter the 2 pieces of information, right, typically the email address and the account name, then you click on Reset Password. They should send an email to you, which has a link that logs you into your user page, which then allows you to change your password. Once you change your password, it logs you out. If you try to navigate away from that page, it will also log you out. But then that means you come back here to the login page, you enter your password, you have the option here to click on Remember Me, and then you click on Sign In. Now, I'm using a test account that I use on a regular basis. In fact, I was just in here earlier this morning. So when I log in, it's taking me right to my dashboard page. If it's your first time logging in, the system will instead take you to your user page. Now, you can always get back to your user account page by clicking on your name up here at the top right. It's going to open up a huge pop-up is essentially what happens. And that's where you can see the email address that you use. This is where you would change your password, right? So this is what the password reset link sends you to. Maybe you change your time zone or the display language. Now, as a system admin, you also have access over here on the left for the account level, which mostly you would change for like changing the technical contact email address, as well as the system-wide display language or time zone. If you need to change the account name, you actually need to email our billing team. That's BILLING at virtualpbx.com. So that way they can make sure everything is changed out on their side, basically make sure everything's linked properly. Something new is on the left here is add-ons. Basically, this allows you to add some new features to your Dash account. Now, currently, The only available one to add on is the text forward feature. And some plans, it's an included feature. I believe the starter plan, it's an additional $5 per month. But this gives you control over what you can add to some degree. Now, once you're done here, click on close at the top right, and you'll be back on the dashboard page. Also, that first time when you log in, the dash wizard will pop up on these account pages to tell you what certain things are. It will also come up here on the dashboard page. The dash wizard will also show up on users and on the groups tabs, which we'll get to after we cover this dashboard page. All right, so back up here at the top, right? You have your name, click on that to get to your user account page, change your password. For most of you, especially if you just signed up with us, to the right of your name, you'll have a D&D toggle, right? D&D standing for do not disturb. Basically, if you click it, if you toggle it on, right, so it's white, basically means you're not taking calls. Right? Your phones will not ring on your system with us. And then you click it to toggle it back off, and then your phones will ring again. The reason I don't have that toggle here on my user is part of the call center, part of the ACD queues. Those two features do not work well together. So once I was assigned to be a member of the call center, that feature, the D&D toggle, was removed. All right, immediately to the right now is the link for the web phone. This only shows up after you've added a web phone device to your user. The web phone basically allows you to use Chrome or Firefox on a computer to make and receive calls. It does count as a VoIP phone. All right, so if I didn't have one assigned to myself, I wouldn't have this icon here. The chat bubble here, that opens up a chat window, and that allows you to chat with our support team. Oh, I'm sorry. They changed that on me. So the chat bubble actually launches the virtual text app if you have that enabled on your user. So then you can instantly get into and start texting with customers. Little help icon opens up the chat window to speak with our staff members. Then we got the 3 horizontal line icon, which is the menu icon, sometimes referred to as a hamburger icon. This will take you to other Dash features. For most of our training, we'll be here on the dashboard, but we'll touch on some of these other subjects. Some of them I have to refer to the links I have in the description. Over here to the right is a link that logs you out. Now, here in the middle, actually, sorry, let's go on the left, where it says right now it's blue and dashboard at the top. And going down, these are other Dash sections. Most of them are included. The main exception is the auto attendance, which is a plan-specific feature. Text forward, which you have to turn on or add on via the add-on tab under the user account page. In the middle here, total users, I have 23, right? So if 23 people on my account, probably they make and receive calls. Again, be aware that most of our plans are based on a per user basis. So the more users you add, the higher your bill. Then I have total devices and a little pie chart here and a breakdown. So Dash was designed with VoIP phones in mind. If you have never heard of the term VoIP or not sure what it means, it stands for Voice over Internet Protocol. And what that means is it uses your internet connection to make and receive calls. And then my first device type up here is called a soft phone, right? So it's a software application, uses your network connection or your internet connection to make and receive calls, right? So this could be if you're making use of the VirtualPBX soft phone app, or if you're using someone else's application. And even if you use the third-party soft phone credentials to program a physical device, right? A physical VoIP phone. Next up, we have the web phone, right? So this is that Chrome Firefox device, still counts as a VoIP phone. Then we have a cell phone. So on Dash, you can add a cell phone number as a device on your user, or even a landline phone number. So something to keep in mind is when we send a call to a cell phone number or a landline number, right? As far as our system is concerned, you're not able to transfer calls within our system, right? So call reaches your cell phone, you answer the call. If they need to speak to your colleague Bob, you're not going to be able to transfer from your cell phone to Bob, right? They either have to call back in or you have to say, hey, let me give Bob the message and he'll call you back. Now it's possible you could be sending use a landline device to send calls to another PBX style system. So when we transfer the call there, at that point, that system would handle the transfers within it. All right, next one here is SIP phone. This is a piece of hardware, right? So it's a physical device, plugs in typically via Ethernet cable, get power, uses your internet connection to make and receive calls. So VoIP, right, general term, SIP is a subtype of VoIP phone. And so if you're out shopping, just make sure you're looking for SIP compliant or SIP compatible phones. And then you have a better chance of it working with us. Oops. Right down here, unregistered devices. This means, and I have 2 of them, that means I have turned 2 of my devices off in the dashboard. For whatever reasons, I decided I'm not using them for right now, but I want to keep them on my system for later use. Right now, I've got next up total numbers. I have 30 phone numbers on the account. Right, your account includes some number of phone numbers as part of your monthly plan price. If you just signed up with us, double check the pricing page, and under the details, it should expand out. It'll tell you how many numbers are included. 30 is a lot in general, especially for an account of this size. And then we have 2 breakdowns. So the first is assigned numbers and spare numbers. Assigned number means you're using it, right? Someone can dial one of the assigned numbers and expect to talk to someone or leave a voicemail, be joining a conference, or be sending a fax. Right? Spare number, you're currently not using it. It counts towards your allotment, right? But maybe you're expanding to a new geographic market, right? So new area code and phone number. You wanted to make sure you had a local number for that area, and you're not putting in service because you don't have anyone ready there to answer calls for it yet, but you want to make sure you got your marketing materials and whatnot ready. In that kind of scenario, I do recommend putting that number in service temporarily and making a test call to it just to make sure it's working properly, and then put it back in spare. The other kind of things that can happen is, you had a promotion running, promotion ended, so you take the number out of service, so that way you're not getting calls about a defunct promotion or advertisement. Then now here we have USDID and US toll-free. Basically just the types of phone numbers. Right, US toll-free is US Canada toll-free. Right, 800 number, 888, 825, etc. Or 855, 822, or 833. Then USDID, that just means a US local phone number. Right, so that's, if you have a number in Boston, Massachusetts, counts as USDID, just as if you had one in Denver, Colorado. You can have international phone numbers if you wish. You're going to want to email our porting team. That's porting at virtualpbx.com. They need to know the city and country that you're interested in getting a number in. And conference bridges, I have 7. That means I have enabled the conference feature on 7 of my users, meaning my 7 staff members can host or moderate a conference. If we go up here to the top right, I have this main number box. I have these 3 main numbers here. These numbers all act the same way, right? They go to the same location. They all play the same main greeting. Then I have the conference room number. I have 1 currently. You can have multiple if you want, but they're all going to the same conference rooms. This is the phone number everyone dials to join a conference. That includes your staff members, right, as well as your clients or your vendors. Then they'll be prompted to enter the conference room number and the PIN number. Fax box number here, this is your main inbound fax number. You can have the 1 number assigned to it. You can edit that fax box to basically have permissions to allow your staff to send faxes out as well, and that's via email. The company directory, there's 2 download links. Oops. Right, we have CSV and soft phone. CSV, just a spreadsheet file, has your staff members' names, their phone numbers, their extension numbers, their primary devices. The soft phone download is for use with the VirtualPBX, a desktop soft phone application. Right, so on Mac OS or Windows. So you download this file, upload it to your VirtualPBX soft phone on your computer. And this will allow you to see the status of the other virtual PBX soft phones on your account, right? So with this, I can see, oh, my coworker Mike is on his soft phone, so I should not try to call him right now because he's obviously tied up. Now, if Mike has multiple devices, I'm not going to be able to tell what he's doing with the other devices, right? So he can be on his J-Link phone talking, but on my side, I can only, from my soft phone, I can only see that his cell phone's not in use. So I could call him, and then he would tell me, hey, I need to call you back. I'm on my other phone. All right. Then we got the virtual PBX store. This opens a link, goes to store.virtualpbx.com, and that's where you can order different kinds of hardware, mostly VoIP phones. And then we have the account realm. Each account has its own account realm. It's used for a couple things. First, it's one of the 3 pieces of information that you would need to program or provision a third-party softphone application or device. The other thing it's used for is for sending a fax out. So sending a fax out is via email. So you don't actually have to log into your Dash account if you know the proper ways to send a fax out. You create an email like you normally do. In the to field, you put the plus sign, the number 1, area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. After that last digit of the phone number, you'll put the @ symbol, and then you put in your account realm. Then you just need to attach a PDF or a TIFF file. Right, so the system looks at the to field, the from field, and the attachment. It does not look at the subject line. It does not look at the body of the email. It will not transmit anything in those 2 fields. You only can fax out 1 attachment per email, so make sure you don't have any signature files also associated with your email. If you want a cover letter or cover sheet as part of your fax, it needs to be included as part of that PDF or TIFF file that you send out. All right, let's go up here towards the top in blue and white is we have a caller ID. You can click on this. It's going to expand out into a fairly large box. Up here at the top, this pull down unfortunately doesn't work on my streaming software, but this allows you to choose any of your main numbers, right? So any of those 3 numbers in that top box, and that becomes your default number. For the main thing is the default for is for your VoIP phones, it becomes their outbound caller ID by default. It also becomes a default for a couple other things. In the company caller ID name, right, otherwise referred to as CNAME in the industry, in this box here to the right, you can enter up to 15 characters. That includes special characters and spaces. Right, so, right. So I can put something like this, and that is what we would associate with this phone number. That's completely optional. You don't have to do that. Down here, we have the company emergency information, or E911, and then it wants a North American address. For our Canadian customers, in the zip code field, that is where you'll put your postal code. And in the state field, that's where you put your 2-character province abbreviation. Once you're done, you click on Save Changes. Now, if you entered any information in the CNAME field up here at the top, that information gets transmitted to the other carriers that support this feature. It takes them up to 3 business days to update their database, or databases, excuse me, basically to associate this phone number with this text. So that way, when you make an outbound call from your VoIP phone, right, this phone number is transmitted and this text is transmitted as part of your caller ID. There are some major caveats to understand about caller ID, or the CNAME specifically. Right? Not every carrier supports the CNAME feature. So if a call happens to route through one of them, your CNAME information doesn't reach the destination. And basically, when you make an outbound call from any kind of phone, right, whether cell phone, VoIP phone, etc., it will go through multiple carriers before it reaches its destination. The other thing about CNAME is that when we send it out, right, that final carrier, the last carrier that is going to, they have final say about what information will show up on their phone's displays, right? They're going to pass through the phone number. But when they see CNAME information, they can choose to pass that through as well. They can choose instead to look up their own database for the phone number and put in their information there instead. Or lastly, they just choose to send just the phone number. And that last option is what the cell phone carriers default to, right? So if you call, Verizon cell phone, T-Mobile, whatever, your phone number will go through. Your CNAM information most likely will not. Many of the carriers will want to charge their subscribers an additional monthly fee to have that CNAME capability show up on their calls on their cell phones. All right, hold music. This button here. This allows you to upload a default hold music file for your staff members. Now, hold music on Dash is after a call has reached into your system, right? Rang your staff member's phone, they've picked up their VoIP phone, they started talking to the customer, and then they press hold on their VoIP phone. That's when this hold music file will play. You can upload your own file. The system will play back .wav and .mp3 files under 1 megabyte. To give yourself more time on the file, I recommend recording in mono. A 1 megabyte MP3 file, for instance, is roughly 5 minutes. You would just click on the browse button here to find the file on your computer, and then click the up arrow icon to upload it to the system. And this would be the default hold music for all your staff members. Now, ours goes to main number. We don't want to set up the whole main number yet until we have destinations within the account. All right, so first up, let's go to users. Over here on the left. So on this account, I have plenty of users, so I could have gone right to main number, but if you just signed up with us, for instance, you probably only have the one user. So the first thing you should do when you get logged in is come to your users tab here, and you'll see that under extensions for the first user on the account, it starts at none, right? Because we're giving you the opportunity to determine what your extension numbering system is going to be based on. What you would want to do is click on the extension box where it says none, and then click on add an extension to the user. Enter an extension number. I usually recommend 4 digits, and then click on Save Changes. Once you have an extension number, you can then also enable your voicemail box. And let's go ahead and close up here. Now, up here at the top, this is where you add new users. All right, so you enter a first name and the last name. It just wants some type of text. Right? We have literally had customers go A and period as their first and last name for some users. The email address used for login has to be unique for each user, right? You cannot reuse an email address. It should be, and this is how the system communicates with your staff members, right? So voicemail notifications, password resets, etc. Password, right? You create a password for the user. This is something they can change, obviously, when they click on their name at the top right. And then you want to give them their main extension number, right? So if you gave yourself extension 1000, you can name or give the second person 1001, right? And it will suggest you the next available extension in the series. By default, the system will want to create a voicemail box for this user. This voicemail box is intrinsically tied to the user, right? So for instance, if you created a user, you added a VoIP phone to them, right? Got it all registered. They could pick up their VoIP phone, dial *98. That will log them directly into their voicemail box that you created with their user. The system will then walk them through creating a PIN number for their voicemail box, and then walk them through recording their name and voicemail box greeting. Right, so then their voicemail box is basically all set. They're ready to go. Here's your option to include the user in the user directory, right? The dial by name directory. You just put a check mark here. You can change this later if you want to. So if you leave it blank, you can add them into it later. Next up, we have send emails to an alternate address. So as I mentioned before, by default, the system will use the email address used for login for any email communications with the staff member, right? So voicemail, notification, password resets. If you don't want those emails to go to that address, so let's say you created a, support5 at virtualpbx.com, right? That's not an actual email address that's in use, but you just don't know the email address that we're going to use for that new staff member yet. Then what you would do is click here and then enter and say like your own email address. So that way, when the staff member gets signed on, you could email it to them if you want to. And then lastly, we have this one here, which is send credentials to the user. All right, put a check mark there. Typically I do recommend checking this one for sure. So if you only need to add the one user, click on create user. If you need to add multiple, create user and add another. If you have this last option checked, once you click on create user or create user and add another, they get an email welcoming them to their Dash account. It's going to have their login information. Once a user is created, you can click on their name, and you can change their name if you need to, right? Because some people change their names. Right here is where you can change their credentials. If you click on it, so this is where you can change their email address or their password. You can also send them the password reset here directly. Here you can change the voice mailbox PIN number for this user. Just enter 4 digits and then save changes. Right, here's your option to send to an alternate address, and here's to be in the user directory or not. Over here on the right where it says user, this pull down allows you to change a user into an admin or an admin into a user. Little clock icon here, this allows you to change the time zone for the user. So that way their voicemail timestamps are correct. Little flag here, this pull down allows you to change the display language for the Dash website for you, the staff member. You have English, French, German, or Russian. The ringing time by default is 20 seconds. In this case, it's grayed out on Aaron because he has a user feature enabled called Follow Me, and that's controlling his ring time. 20 seconds, plenty of time to send calls to a VoIP phone or a landline. If a staff member is only using a cell phone, you'd want to increase this to at least 30 seconds, if not up to 45. It simply takes longer to route a call to a cell phone because they have to find the cell phone first. Extension box, you can add multiple extensions to a user, right? Phone numbers, so users can have their own phone numbers, right? You have this option here of buying new or adding from spare. If you click on add from spare, this will show you your available spare numbers. You click on the box that you want to use, click add selected, and then you would click on save changes. All right, so now Aaron has 2 direct phone numbers that people can call him on. And you notice up here at the top, I have this little icon here, 2 pages, that lets you know there's multiple. And then I can unassign that number. I click on his box again. By numbers, you have local or toll-free. Toll-free is pretty easy. You choose the toll-free prefix you want to work with, do a search. It may take a little while to populate, but then you see a list of toll-free numbers with this prefix, and you can keep scrolling down to see more. You click add next to any number you want to add to it. Then you click on by numbers to complete the process. Now, one thing you want to avoid doing is start the process but not finish it, right? So let me make sure it's completed. There we go. So let's say I go to by numbers. I do chill free. I do 855. So let's say I click add on that first one, and then I walk away. All right, so I'll simulate walking away. I'm just going to mute myself for like a minute here or so. I'll be right back. All right. So just by adding that phone number into my cart, I haven't reserved that number. So it's possible in that time that I, wandered away or just simulated, right? Someone could have completed the process for the same number. And then if I come back and I click buy, it's possible that number is no longer available and I would get an error message. So again, whenever you add a number, just make sure you click buy to complete that process. For local numbers, you need to know the area code that you want a number in. Right, so do a search. For any area code, and this includes the toll-free prefixes, you can get this kind of error message saying there's no numbers available in it. Right, that means that area code is exhausted, meaning there's none readily available. Now, in this case, what's normally recommended is you use your favorite search engine and do a search for, in this case, area code 310 overlay. That will tell me that 424 is the overlay for this area code. And you see that there's currently quite a few. And then same process, right? Click by numbers and add it. Overlays, right, just means one or two or more area codes that cover the same geographic boundaries. Right, that means that area has to do 10-digit dialing to make outbound calls. Right, so most big cities or metropolitan areas will have multiple area codes, and in some cases have overlays. If you have to have a specific phone number in an area code, you can email our porting team, and we can try to do what's called a back order. There's no guarantee we get the number. In fact, we can't even tell you when you might get the number, because basically what that does is we say, hey, if a number in this area code becomes available, we want to get it. Well, what that means is we have to wait for someone to give up their number. And then let me click on Save Changes, and then I'll unassign the relevant numbers. All right, so let me... Now, one thing to also know about numbers that are assigned directly to a user, that number is available 24/7. It does not have hours of operation. The next box over is devices. So this is where you would add a device directly to a user. So we'll go to Bob real quick. You can add from spare, which means you're reusing a device, or you can go to new. First up is SIP phone, right? So this is that physical piece of hardware. You have these manufacturers to choose from. And then if you click on a specific manufacturer, you can see the models that are available. Right? Some have quite a few, others not nearly that many. Right? But then you find the make and model of the phone that you want to work with. Down here, you give it a name, right? So like Bob's phone or break room phone, whatever. I tend to recommend against using generic things like phone 1 and 2, 3, and mostly just because 6 months, a year from now, you may not know where that phone really goes to if you just look at the devices list, especially if it's moved around a lot. The MAC address, this is unique to each phone, typically a sticker on the back or bottom of the phone. If the phone's plugged in, you can also get this usually under the status settings or the basic settings, excuse me. And then you would click on Create Device and then Save Changes. Now, once the device is here, all right, click on the Devices box again, click on the device. You want to go under Advanced into Miscellaneous. And where it says Allow Reprovision, click on Unlock. You'll click on Save Changes here, and again, Save Changes here. So that tells the system, hey, this phone is ready to get provisioned. Then you need to access the phone's web user interface. If you go to our support pages, you're going to want to do a search for auto provisioning. That has a document that has the screenshots for the various manufacturers, so you know what to look for, the proper syntax for the URL to give the phone to get its config file, and in most cases, some settings to double check. Right? Basically, you go through those documents for your phone manufacturer. You would click on Save or Confirm or Update, and then you would click on Auto Provision. Now that usually tells the phone, basically the phone will reboot a couple times. Basically goes out, gets the config file, downloads it, reboots, and after it's done rebooting, again, usually twice, 2 to 3 times, depending on the manufacturer, and then it should turn up as a green device on your system. Right? That means you can make and receive calls. Also, when a device is added, right, you can check these other settings. One thing I want to go back to on the phone number real quick. On the phone number box, you have this gear icon here. So you can update the caller ID, right? So you give caller ID name, or you can turn on the ability to accept inbound caller ID name. E911, each phone number can have its own address associated with it for E911 purposes. This allows you to assign this phone number and address to particular VoIP phones for the purposes of E911 only, right? So if a VoIP phone picks up 911, it sends out the location information to emergency services based on the E911 settings for that device. Now, by default, it uses your main number, but again, you can set it up for each phone number, each device to have its own address. Prepend on a phone number. This is for your VoIP phone users. You can add text in front of the caller ID. Right. But so once you've got the E911 set up on phone numbers, then you can go to the device under advanced. And for emergency caller ID, right, you can select that particular phone number, and then that will be the address that is sent out for 911 purposes. Audio for physical device, you always want G711A and G711U. For the VirtualPBX soft phone, it defaults to Opus, which is fine. External caller ID, you can set up which phone number you want on the system to use for the outbound caller ID for this phone as well. But again, by default, it's going to use the main number on the account. And that's pretty much it for the common things that are addressed. Next up, cell phone. Actually, here, let me go to a different user too. Right, so, right, cell phone, you give it a name and then the number, right? +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. You click on create device. And we click on this one here. And this is what it should look like. So you give it a name, right? +1 area code and phone number, and then save changes. Let's go to advanced options here. This is the default setup for any added cell phone number or landline, right? So call comes into the system, reaches to David's cell phone, right? His cell phone rings, he picks up. And when he picks up, the first thing he hears is that this is a forwarded call. Please press 1, right? So when you press 1, you're telling the system, yes, you're there. And yes, you want to take the call. Now, let's say, for instance, instead, this cell phone number is actually designed to go to an automated answering service, right? So contracted out with another company that said, yeah, here's a phone number, send all your after-hours calls to this number, and we'll handle them. Generally speaking, in that kind of service, it's an automated service, right? Not necessarily phone rings and a person picks up, but usually it's the phone number rings and automated system picks up. So in that situation, over here under advanced, right, where it says allow use of cell phone's voicemail, put a check mark here, right? Because by default, if we set it to an automated answering service, right, that automated answering service can't press 1, right? It doesn't have fingers, right? It doesn't know when to send that one tone, for instance. And because it's probably a general service, there's probably any number of different options they would have to press. So you put this, you make this change on our side. So now when we send the calls to this phone number, when we hear that pickup tone, we connect the call. There's no message about having to press 1. There's no need to press 1. Right. Now, if this was actually David's cell phone, right, when a call comes to it, what could happen is his cell phone voicemail can pick up, still pickup tone. So we connect the call. So that means the inbound caller ends up on David's personal cell phone versus the system voicemail. Right? Some people want that, some people don't. The other thing that can come up is this one here. Keep original caller ID, right? So customer Mary calls into the system, rings David's phone on his cell phone. He sees customer Mary's phone number. He's been getting hit by telemarketers or other robo-dialers. He's like, yeah, no, I don't recognize that number, letting it go to voicemail. Maybe he's able to reach out to customer Mary and still make a sale, maybe not. So instead, what you could do is uncheck this, right? Click on Save Changes. So when customer Mary calls, instead of seeing customer Mary's phone number, right, David would see this phone number up here. So hopefully your staff would recognize the main company number. Oh, this is a work call. Let me answer it. The user's here. All right, so next up is a soft phone. Now, whenever you add a soft phone or web phone to the account, you automatically get this warning message. You should read it at least once, if not a couple of times. It basically addresses the fact that there's now such a thing as wireless VoIP technology. And if you dial 911, you might not be at the location that's actually associated with your device. So be careful about doing so. Once you've done reading that, click close, and then a larger box will pop up. And you see here, this is for adding a soft phone. Now, it defaults you to adding a third-party soft phone, right? Because there's many more soft phone types out in the world than, just ours. So if you're gonna make use of a third-party soft phone, that's fine. You would just give it a name here in the device name. You would copy and paste the SIP username someplace, right? Either in the device or into like a document. Click on the SIP password, right? Copy and paste that. You do not want to change this. And then you would copy and paste your account realm. Those are the 3 pieces of information you would need to make use of a third-party soft phone, right, to get it provisioned and working. Now, if you want to use the VirtualPBX soft phone instead, what you would do is go down here on the bottom, right below where it says View Configuration Guide. There's a little toggle. It's grayed out, might be hard to see, but right now it says Use Third-Party Application. When you click on it, it flips. Now it says Use VirtualPBX Application, right? The box shrunk down. You still need to give it a device name, right? Then you click on Create Device, and then you click on Save Changes. Once you click on Save Changes, the user gets an email saying your VirtualPBX soft phone is ready. It has their login information for the soft phone and download links, right? So the login information to the Dash website and to the soft phone are going to be completely different. If you want to make use of the VirtualPBX soft phone, you have to add it onto a user directly. Right, there is a devices tab on the left. Adding a soft phone on the devices tab does not give you the option to make use of the VirtualPBX soft phone. That's only for third party. And then web phone is the other thing you would want to associate directly to a user. Give it a name, click on Create Device, click on Save Changes. The web phone uses your Dash login information, right? So when you go to webphone.virtualpbx.net, it has a login page. It has a username, password, and account realm. Same information that you use to log into dash.virtualpbx.com. All right, let's go over to user features. So first up, caller ID, or caller ID number, excuse me. This is basically designed for users with their own phone numbers. So you select their phone number on their user, click on Save Changes, and this becomes their outbound caller ID from their VoIP phones. Right? So every time they make a call out, this, in this case, 323 phone number is what shows up when Aaron makes an outbound call instead of the 42 phone number that's set up under the main number. Right? If I leave it off, then by default, when Aaron makes a call out, the 424 phone number shows up. Virtual text, this is for texting. Basically, you turn it on, you choose a number on the account. This is typically a main number, auto attendant number, or a number assigned directly to the user, and then Save Changes. Once you click on Save Changes, the user gets an email welcoming them to Virtual Text. Has its own login, right? So Aaron here would have 3 pieces of login information, right? One for Dash, one for his soft phone, and then another one for Virtual Text. Virtual Text you can use via an app that you can download to your iOS or Android phone, or via a website. Just in the address bar, type in virtualtext.app. You log in, and you can start texting in and out from the number assigned. The main advantage of Virtual Text is you can share a number among staff members, so like your main number. So that way you have someone who can keep track of the text conversations you're having. If you do not see the virtual text feature on your users, then you need to reach out to our account services team because they're the ones who enable that for you. They'll also talk to you about SMS registration, which may or may not be up here in the top right. For most accounts, it'll be on here on the top right and towards the bottom, where you then go through the registration process. All right, next up is the voicemail box. Again, for most new users, it's automatically enabled. This is the default setup. And basically, with voicemail to email enabled, that means when a voicemail is left, the system sends out an email to the user. Right, it has the date, the time, phone numbers involved, the voicemail box, and then an MP3 attachment. Right, so on their computer or even on their phone, right, they can just tap on it and they can listen directly on their device. Voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they are full and cannot hold any more. Now, this default setup, you have 3 ways to listen to your voicemails and 2 ways to manage them. Right, so one of the ways to listen to is via email. No way to manage it that way through that email, though. The other 2, first is dialing into your system. Right, so if you have a phone number, go to your virtual receptionist, which we'll be getting to under main number. Right, because your staff would dial in, say from their cell phone. When they hear the main greeting, they hit *97. The system asks them for their voicemail box number and their PIN number, and they can listen over the phone. Similarly, yeah, have trouble with that word. From your VoIP phones, right? Again, staff members can pick up, dial *98. That takes them right to their voicemail box. They still have to put their PIN number in, but then they can listen to their voicemails that way and delete them after they're done listening to them. And then the third method is via logging into dash.virtualpbx.com and going to the user portal. So I'm an admin here, so I have it down over here. But for your normal staff members, right, they might only have the option for the user portal. So then it defaults them there. And there's a voicemail tab. They can listen to them right there in the browser. They can delete them, download them, etc. If you have a very busy voicemail box, like a general voicemail box, or like one that's assigned to like your general information group or your front desk group or whatever, and it's too much for one person to keep track of on a daily basis, that is one where we go back to voicemail boxes. You might want to consider doing this, right? Where it says delete messages after notification, put a check mark there. That way, the voicemail box won't get full, but the only way to check it, the messages, is via email. So if you have a problem with the email, then you might be losing messages. All right, follow me. This is for users with multiple devices. This is something the admins have to set up for them, right? And here, so when you first enable it, it looks like this. And you need to tell the device, the system, what devices to use and how to make use of them, right? And then when you uncheck it, it actually looks like this initially. Now, along the top, these are timestamps. Defaults to 120 seconds. You can change that down to 60 or up to 600, whatever. You can click and drag these bars, right, to have the ring times match, or you can click distribute. So now it rings the demo device first and then this soft phone second. If I click and drag, I can move the soft phone first, click distribute again. So now the soft phone rings first and then this demo device, which is a cell phone. And then click on Save Changes. Now, one thing to know about the Follow Me feature is that calls from a ring group ignore the Follow Me feature, right? So if Aaron is part of a ring group and a call is offered to him from that group, both of these devices ring at the same time. Oh, I guess one thing I should point out, staff members with the little gray person icon, standard user, right? People with the blue suit, system admins. All right, let's go back over here. Fax box. So you can decide to have your users have their own fax box if you want them to. And when you do so, you have the choice to select a new spare number, buy a new number, or assign a new extension number. Right? So basically, Aaron could have 2 extensions, one for faxing, one for calls. I usually recommend making use of a phone number because that way this user can then send and receive faxes. right? If you just use an extension number, they can only ever receive faxes, and you potentially restrict who can send them a fax, right? Some electronic fax services, or many, at least the ones I've tried, they don't have the option to include an extension number, right? They just say, here, enter the phone number, and that's it. So that's why I usually recommend making use of a phone number. In terms of outbound, the system uses the fax box parameters for sending out via outbound. So if there's not a phone number associated with it, it tries to use the extension number as the outbound caller ID, and that's going to fail. Conference bridge, up here, you click to enable, and then you do need to create a PIN number for the user, and then you can click on Save Changes. The staff member can change their PIN number for the conference via the user portal. Enable video conferencing. If you enable this is just for internal use, right? So anyone outside of your Dash account won't be able to make use of video on the conference. Call forwarding, you have off, on, or failover mode. Failover mode is something the admins have to set up. Your staff members can turn call forwarding off or on their own. They can either do that via the user portal, or they can do that on their VoIP phones directly. If you have a staff member who has a VoIP phone and a cell phone as their primary devices, you don't need to make use of call forwarding at all, right? Because you're already forwarding it to a cell phone as part of their normal routing. But failover mode is for someone who only has a VoIP phone, right? Or maybe they have, a Yealing phone, a web phone, and a soft phone, right? You can still then do failover mode, because what it does is if the VoIP phones go offline and a call happens to come to the user at that time, the system will forward the calls to the phone number you designated. You choose mobile or desk phone, you put +1 area code on phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and then save changes. Customize call recording. So when you first enable it, it looks like this, right? You have to tell the system what kind of calls you're forwarding or recording, excuse me. Right? Inbound internal, right? That means coworker Bob called Aaron. Right? Inbound external, customer Mary called Aaron. Outbound internal, Aaron called Bob. Outbound external, Aaron called customer Mary. So we usually see something like this, or just all four of them, right? And then you'll click on Save Changes. Your account includes some level of data storage as part of your monthly plan price. If you have high or heavy call volume and you record every call, you'd want to definitely talk to our account services team about turning on AWS integration. What this does is then allows you to link your Dash account to your AWS account and have AWS do your data storage in terms of your call recordings. And at high volumes, especially, it tends to be more cost effective to go through AWS than with us. Music on hold, you can decide to have your users have their own hold music, upload a file, right? .mp3, .wav, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. Click the up arrow icon after you find it on your device and then save changes. And that will become their hold music, right? Instead of the system default hold music that you set up earlier. So like if you want your sales team to have one hold music that talks about their current specials or promotions that are going on, you could do so, whereas the rest of your staff has the standard voicemail or hold music that you set up on the dashboard. Do not disturb. If you turn this on, that means this user's phones will not ring. Right, calls to them will go to voicemail. If someone tries to transfer a call to them, they'll get a message saying that the person is unavailable, and then they'll have to they should be given instructions then to transfer directly to that person's voicemail box. Hot desking. This is a VoIP phone feature. You create a hot desk ID for the user. I usually say, hey, if you're making use of 4-digit extensions, use their extension number as a hot desk ID number. Up to you if you want to require a PIN number, and then you click on Save Changes. So this is designed with like a shared office space or hybrid scheduling. Right? So Aaron comes to the office on Tuesday. He sits down at desk number 2. He picks up the phone. He dials *11. That turns hot desking on that phone. The system will prompt him for his hot desk ID number and PIN number if you assigned one. And then it will tell him calls now will be sent to this device. The rest of his workday on Tuesday, calls to Aaron's user will ring to his phone there at desk number 2. End of his day, he picks up the phone, *12 to turn off hot desking, he goes home. Right? Next time he comes to the office, Angela's sitting at desk number 2, he says good morning, and he sits at desk number 7. Same thing, picks up the phone, *11, hot desk ID, calls are coming to him at desk number 7. All right, so now that we have users with devices, we can go to groups. Groups are ring groups or hunt groups, right? Basically departments. Multiple calls can come to multiple staff members. Up here at the top, you click on add group. You need to give it a name. You need to give it an extension number. You have this one here. Find one will be so that way you don't have to keep accidentally reusing the extension numbers. Then after that, you click and drag your staff members that you want to be in the group. And then you click on create group. Once a group is created, you can click on the name. All right, so you can always change the name whenever you need to. And then you've got group call attempts. This is how many times the system will offer calls to the members of the group. You have little arrows here to increase or decrease that amount. So right now it's on 2. You also have the option to delete the group, but if you make any changes, click on Save Changes. Then we have the members box. If we click on that, shows all the staff members assigned and how calls are being offered to them. So this setup is referred to as blast ringing or ring all. So basically, call comes in, it rings all these staff members at the same time, all of their devices that are on their users, until one of them picks up. Now, up here at the top, kind of like under follow me, right? I've got distribute, so I can do it like this. So now every time a call comes in, it rings to Bob first, no matter what. Right? If Bob is already on a call, he will get a call waiting beep if he has that enabled on his actual phone. But otherwise, right, the call is offered to him for 24 seconds and then offered to Aaron after that point, right? So you could do something like this to have some overlap, so that way those second or third callers don't have to wait on hold for too long before someone can pick up, right? You can change the total time, right? Default is 2 minutes. Down here, you can add additional staff members. Now they're added to the beginning, but I click distribute if I wanted to. Again, these are toggles, sliders, so I can adjust the ring time. And also, I can change the order by clicking and drag, right? So like if Bob has a project, I move him to the bottom, click distribute, and now he's at the very end. Right, if I need to remove someone, I just click the remove button, and then any changes I make, click on save changes. And those are basically your routing options. Basically, you can ring it in a specific order or ring them all at the same time. Right, and once a user is assigned to a group, they're in the group, right? They don't have a way to sign out or mark away or anything like that. If you want more or advanced routing options, that would be under the call center. Right? The call center has things like round robin, etc. I'll get into that a little bit later. Groups can have multiple extension numbers if you want them to. Right? They can have their own phone numbers. Again, that can add for server by new. A phone number assigned to a group, no hours of operation, right? Available 24/7. And then we've got group features. Ring back. So call comes in to the group, right? Rings your staff members' phones. That ringing sound is then is sent back to the inbound caller, so they hear that ringing sound, ring back. If instead you want them to listen to something else, you would enable this feature up here at the top, and you can upload a media file, right? .wav, .mp3, recorded into Mono on a 1 megabyte. So in this case, when they call into this group, they hear "Don't worry, be happy" until one of my staff members picks up. The main thing to remember is about any file you select here needs to be as long as your total ring time for the group, right? The system doesn't automatically loop it for you. Next action, I recommend enabling this because basically it's saying if no one is able to pick up the call, where do you want to forward the call to? You got to pull down here. You can select send calls to a particular user, a particular device, another group, or a queue if you're making use of them, or a voicemail box. Right, basically select where you want to go and then save changes. Allow call forward. If you click enable, that means your staff members can make use of call forwarding. Again, if they already have cell phones on their users, you don't need to make use of call forwarding. A caller ID prepend, this is for your VoIP phone users. When you click enable, you can add either text in front of the caller ID that shows up on their VoIP phones or numbers that show up on their caller ID. I usually recommend making use of one or the other, not both, as that can be a little confusing. And typically I find text to be more useful than numbers, mostly because the numbers can also look like part of the phone number of the person who's calling in. That might be my personal issue with my eyes. There's that. Now, so we have users and groups, right? So two possible destinations for calls coming into the main number. So let's go to main number now. All right, up here at the top, you have your main company numbers. You can obviously have multiple. You can add from spare or buy new. So we can add this like 323 phone number, for example. And so now I have an additional number. Right, buy numbers just like before, local toll free. Just make sure you complete the process and it will show up here. You get the little gear icon that I mentioned previously where you can update caller ID, E911, or prepend. Next up, we have office hour strategy. You have 24-hour open office, right? Meaning you're open 24/7, or custom office hours, which means for every day of the week that you're open, put a check mark in front of the day, and then set your hours in 24-hour or military time. Down towards the bottom, you also have the option to say, hey, my system closes for lunch at the same time for every workday. You put a check mark here, and then you put your lunch hours in 24-hour or military time, and then click on Save Changes. Office holidays, right? Put a check mark if you're closed for holidays. And over here to the right, click on Add Holiday. You have the option here for single day, date range, or advanced. Selecting any one of those will create a new row. Single day, like I have here for New Year's Day, right? You give it a name, choose the month and the date, click on Save Changes. Right? Date range, give it a name, start date, end date, save changes. And then advanced is like here for Thanksgiving, gave it a name, choose the month. This pull down has the options of 1st through 5th as well as last, and then the day of the week, and click on Save Changes. If you want to remove a holiday, click on the little trash icon and then Save Changes. And then we have incoming call handling. So you have an open hours tab, an after hours tab, and a holidays tab. Basically, it's for your main numbers during these particular times. How are you handling calls? All right, so my main numbers during my open hours, I have them go to my virtual receptionist here, which is a link. And I get a warning message about my main greeting not being in place. So over here on the left, my main menu. This is where I can add button where people can press buttons on their phone to navigate through my phone system. I click Add Route. That gives me a new row. This pull down allows me to select 0 through 9. I also have the star key and then the default action, which it starts off with. And then this pull down are locations within your system, right? The PBX directory, any users you've added, any call queues if you're making use of the call center, any ring groups you've created, any devices you've added, and any voicemail boxes. And then media file. So any like greeting file that you want to have in place. If you select the media file after it's done playing, the call ends, right? So you would use that for like directions or hours of operation possibly. But then once that file stops playing, the call will end. So be aware of that. Over here on the right, we have our greetings, right? So these are your greetings options. You have text to speech. So this will allow you to type in a greeting, right? So operator. Now, in the text-to-speech box, you can enter up to 250 characters, not words. Does not count spaces, I have found. In some cases, I have gone over the 250 characters, but 250 works consistently. This reads it back as a computerized or robotic voice. Right? So this is good for you're just getting used to the system, you've never used PBX systems, or your startup, right? Or any combination of those. So you're still trying to figure out how calls are going to flow through. Once you click update and then save and save changes, the system saves the file and it gives it the name main open hours menu TTS, right? Because this is my main open hours and then menu, and I chose text to speech. Now, if you're going to make use of text to speech greetings, I recommend that after you're done creating them, over on the after you click save and save changes, on the left, click on greetings and click on wrench next to the main open hours menu TTS and rename it to something. Just main greeting 1, just so you know what it is, right? Because what can happen is under choose from existing recordings, you could have multiple files that say main open hours menu TTS, and you wouldn't know which one is which. You can upload your own file, right? .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. Find the file on your computer, click update, save and save changes. Choose from an existing recording. This pull down will show all the media files on your account. Main greetings, voicemail greetings, hold music files. So that's why you want names that you can quickly identify what they are. Excuse me. You can record a greeting over the phone. When the system says pick up a phone, register to the account, that's its way of saying pick up a VoIP phone on the account. If you don't want to do that, or you can't for whatever reasons, you can get around it. So let's say you want to use your cell phone, for instance. So under settings, where it says allow outside recording, turn that on and save changes. This now allows you to change your main greeting over the phone from any phone, right? Cell phone, landline, VoIP phone. Now, when you call in, if you don't already have a greeting in place, right, and you call to your main number, the system will say the greeting for this menu has not been created yet, and then prompt you for your PIN number, which is right here. Your PIN number is specific to the time of day, right? So this PIN number only works during my open hours. So if I call on Saturday, it won't work. Now, let's say I already have a greeting, right? Because I put a text-to-speech greeting in place. I call in, I hear that text-to-speech greeting during my open hours. I can still enter this PIN number. The system will recognize it and then walk me through recording it over the phone. When you do it that way, the system keeps the original file name, but you overwrite the content with your voice or whoever's voice. So it's something to be aware of, especially around the holidays. Professional recording services, when you click order, this will open up a new tab and take you to Snap Recordings. And basically, you go through their system to order a professionally recorded greeting. They charge you via credit card typically, and then they send you the file. And so then you would upload your own file. All right, settings. First up we have here is number of tries on missed dial. This is how many times your inbound caller can make a mistake. So right now I have it set to 1, meaning they get 2 total attempts, right? So they call in, and let's say they press 7. The system says, well, that's not a valid option. There's no extension 7. So then it plays the greeting again. Now, let's say they press 7 for a second time. Since that's still not a valid option. So in this case, since I have a default action here, it will send it to the Smart PBX directory. If I click X over here and remove that, on that second failed attempt, the system will say, we did not recognize your entries, goodbye, and ends the call. Okay, dialing timeout. Right now I have it set to 5. That means after that person pressed 7, the system waits for 5 seconds. Right, to a count of 5, it says, oh, you meant just 7. Right, now, if within that 5 seconds they hit 722, right, then the system goes, oh, you would look up to see if there's extension number 722. and then transfer the call. We already talked about allow outside recording. Oh, by default, this is set to off as a security measure. So once you're done changing your main greeting, we do recommend you change it back to off. Allow dialing extensions. By default, this is on, and this just means if someone enters in a valid extension number, the system will transfer that call to that extension number. If you turn that off, that means the inbound caller can only press your menu options. Entering an extension number counts as an invalid entry. And then lastly, we have to suppress the playing of the invalid entry. So if you don't want that invalid entry message to play, like especially say, for instance, you have that default action in place going to a voicemail box or to a user or whatever, then you can turn this on. So that way that message that's saying, we did not recognize your entries doesn't get played at all. Any changes you make to your main menu, to your greetings or your settings, click on save, and then make sure you click save changes here under incoming call handling. All right, after hours, I'm making use of what's referred to as our operator answer option. Right, basically this pull down up here, designed to allow you to select a user, a group, a device, or a queue, right, to give someone or multiple people a chance to answer the call first. If they're not able to, then it goes to your virtual receptionist, in this case, my after hours virtual receptionist, where I likely have a different greeting in place, different menu options, even potentially different settings. Right, beyond that, though, it's the same as the daytime virtual receptionist. Then holidays, I'm using this third option. And in this case, calls come in, they're going to hear a media file play, and then they get sent to this voicemail box. Now, right, I can send them to a specific person, right? So this Aaron could be my holiday on duty person. So it tries to ring him first, but if he's not able to get the call, it goes to the main voicemail box. Right, I can send it to a call queue. I can send it to a ring group, etc. And then I can also choose the specific voicemail box I want the messages to go to. Main conference number, you get multiple conference room numbers, right? You can add from spare, buy new, but they're all going to the same conferences, right? Same conference rooms. Here you have the option to enter a custom text-to-speech greeting. You just turn it on and type in the greeting, 250 characters, and then click on save. Even if I leave this disabled, when you call your conference room number, the system says welcome to the conference and then prompts you to enter the conference room number and the PIN number. The main fax box, you can only have the one main fax box number. This is your inbound fax number. And then you can edit your fax box. So here, this is your inbound notification email. All right, so you put in an email address of the person or people you want to be receiving your inbound faxes. So every time a fax comes in, they get an email, shows the date, the time, phone numbers involved, and then they have a PDF attachment that they can click on and view. Now, if someone dials your fax box number, say from their cell phone, and then they hang up after hearing the fax tones, this person gets an email saying, hey, there was a failed inbound fax attempt. Here's the phone numbers involved. Right now, sometimes in the caller ID, it will say wireless number. So when you see that, you can say, misdial. Right? Other than that, if it's a number you recognize or you're expecting a fax home, for instance, you want to contact them saying, hey, there was a problem. Can you resend? The email permissions field, this is designed to put your company email domain. So I can do this, for example. So now anyone at VirtualPBX can send a fax out from the system, even if they're not a user on the account, right? They just need to know the account realm and then attach a PDF or TIFF. And then you click on Save Changes. Auto attendance is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to create secondary attendance. Major use cases are for submenuing, right? One for English, two for Spanish. Then you would create an English and Spanish auto attendant here. Or if you have multiple businesses and you want them on the same account, right? So those multiple businesses would have their own phone numbers, their own main greetings, but you can send calls to the same staff members among these multiple businesses. You can have them different extension numbers if you want, up to you. Up here at the top, you click on Add Attendant. You need to give it a name. You give it an extension number. Right? The extension number, your customers probably will never know, but your staff can make use of it to send callers to the correct auto attendant. After you've created an attendant, it looks like this by default. So pushwalk is unavailable in main menu, meaning right now it's a standalone auto attendant. So in this case, it'd be for a separate business. I can delete it if I no longer need to make use of it. This is a toggle, so I can click it to make it available in main menu. That means it's a submenu item, right? So it can show up as an option under my virtual receptionist, for instance. You probably don't need to do that for separate businesses, but for like that English and Spanish kind of option, you would do that, right? And because attendants can be for separate businesses, they can have their own phone numbers. You can add from spare or by new. You got the little gear icon here for caller ID, E911, and prepend purposes. They have to have an extension because that's what you needed to do to create them, but you can add additional if you need to. Little wrench icon under settings. Right? You have open hours, after hours, and holidays. Right? This matches what we set up under the main number. Right? But beyond that, it's the virtual receptionist. So you set up menu options, greetings, etc. Save and save changes. Right, devices tab shows your devices in use. These black ones here are the ones we've turned off, right? These are the unregistered devices. Red means it's unregistered. So like in case of a web phone, that means they probably haven't logged in. Right? That could also apply for a soft phone. For a physical device like this one down here, if it's red, that means it could be not be plugged in right now. Right? Either not through its network or power. There could be also actually any red device could be there's a network problem, whether that's because someone lost internet connection because like the ISP is having a major maintenance, or someone hit the wrong thing, had a traffic accident, knocked out whatever, or it could just be there's a network setting that needs to be adjusted. All right, you got the little gear or wrench icon here. And the main thing here is, right, you can select the emergency caller ID to have whatever appropriate phone number and address that's you want. You can add devices here, but you can't assign them anywhere. And again, just remember if you add a soft phone here, it's only a third party. You cannot make it a VirtualPBX soft phone. All right, the greetings tab shows all your media files on the account. Right, their name, the source, right? So TTS is text to speech. Upload means it was an uploaded file. Recording means it was recorded over the phone. Here you have the option to play it back and listen to it and see if it's still relevant. If for some reason that doesn't work, you have a download, so you can download it to your device and listen to it on your own media player. And then you have the option to edit, which you can change the file name or delete the greeting itself. So I can delete this one here, and now it's no longer on my system. Now, if I was using that greeting, I need to go back to the relevant auto attendant or virtual receptionist and make sure I assign a greeting in place. The numbers tab starts you off on your numbers in use. This shows you the numbers and where they are assigned. You cannot unassign them here. This does allow you to get the gear icon, so you can edit the caller ID, E911, or prepend for any phone number. Spare numbers, these are the numbers you're not using. So if you want to remove numbers from your account, click on the checkbox in front of them, and then up here, you have the option to delete. You confirm the deletion. It says it's completed, and now I have 2 less phone numbers on my account. I can buy new local or toll-free numbers here. It will add them just as my spare numbers, so then I can assign them later. Port will start the port process. You just choose new port process, give it a name, choose local toll-free, and then we'll ask you to upload a PDF copy of your most recent bill from the current carrier. Basically, you're filling out online forms at this point, like the address, the company name. BTN is a billing telephone number. If you're only porting one number, just use that the number you're porting as a BTN. Some carriers require a PIN number to port out. That's typically, we see that on mobile phone numbers, right? Because if a mobile phone number ports out, the cell phone that's associated with no longer works. Also, we've seen it on some Canadian carriers, but it's something to check. And some carriers have it right on their invoice. So then you can say, oh, here's the PIN number, and you don't have to worry about it. You do need to, within the port process, there's the ability to download a blank LOA or letter of agency, and then you can upload a completed and signed LOA. The LOA does need a signature, whether that's a digital signature file or you printed it out, signed it yourself, and scanned it back in, right? But just typing your name twice or printing your name will not work. It gets rejected every time and just delays when your port will go through. Toll-free numbers typically take 1 week to port. Right? 3 to 5 business days is what they say, but from what I've seen, basically a week. Local numbers, they range. The average is about 2 to 3 weeks. If we get a rejection, we always double check to make sure there wasn't a typo on our side, or there wasn't any, like, if it's like an address, we check if there's 2 addresses involved so we can try the other address. But assuming that isn't in play, then we let you know saying, hey, we're getting a rejection and here's what they gave us. It's not always going to be specific. Like if there's an address problem, right? We usually get address mismatch. If we're lucky, they tell us zip code mismatch or something like that. But that's all they tell us. They don't tell us if it's the street number is wrong or the city was wrong, anything like that. So that's all we can give you. And basically at that point, you'd want to talk to your carrier, the current carrier, to find out what they're looking for in order to report. Right. Voicemail boxes shows all the voicemail boxes on your account. Anything that has an entry under the user field here means it was created with the user. Right? The ones that don't, like this one here, were manually created on this page. Right? Up here at the top, give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number, and then click on Create Voicemail Box. Click on the wrench icon. So here, this basic information, this is what you need to like check messages over the phone or to change the greeting over the phone for this voicemail box. Under Advanced Greeting Media, you can upload media files directly to the voicemail box or use these pull downs to select voicemail box or voicemail greetings that are already on the system. You have 2 fields, media and temporary. The temporary is for the like your out of office or vacation message. If something is selected in temporary and media, right? So they both have valid file names here. The temporary file plays, the media does not. That media file will not play until you change temporary to none and then save changes. Recipients, click add to add a recipient, right? Just enter an email address and keep clicking add until you're done adding and then save changes. Your user voicemail boxes have a built-in recipient, right? That email address you use for login, but you can add additional emails as necessary. And then you go to options. If you have a media file in place and recipients in place, then under already set up, you can put a check mark here. And then you can double check, make sure that attached messages to email is enabled. And again, if you want to delete messages after that notification for a busy voicemail box. And then click on Save Changes. Text forward, new feature. Up here at the top, you click on Add Number. You choose a number on your account. Pull downs aren't working. You enter an email address or a webhook, right? One or the other, not both. Email address tends to be the easiest. And then you click on Create Text Forward. And basically what happens is if someone texts a number, a message to this phone number, it will send to the email address or the webhook associated with it. And then you can view that text. Right. This would be so you can receive texts, but you're not going to be able to send out via text forward. Right. That's what virtual text is for back and forth. Call logs shows your call history on the account. Today, you can see I only had the 1 incoming call. And here it came in and was offered to this device. Now, this message here indicates that there was a problem, a network problem, most likely with this device, and that's why it didn't offer it properly. Normally, you want to see normal clearing, right? Because that lets you know the call ended normally. Go to this week, so you can see more calls that came in. Let's scroll down. You can see here, call came in and it went to this particular device and ended normally. So green arrow to the right, incoming call. A yellow arrow to the left, that's an outbound call. And you can see what kind of device it went out from. Little fire extinguisher icon, this reports the call. Basically, it creates an email for you, already addressed to support@virtualpbx.com, and includes the technical details. Please type in context. Because if you send a call that has normal clearing, we're probably not gonna know right off the bat why you're sending it in. Right? So we need to say like, oh, did you have bad audio, or phone didn't actually ring, what have you. Up here at the top, you can download each, this today, this week, or this month, downloads it as a CSV file. So if you're good with spreadsheets, you can gain some more information about your call history. The custom field allows you to change the date range. So for instance, I can go back to last month and then click filter, and I'll change the date range there. The system will allow you to go back up to 12 months. If you have to go back further than that, you would have to contact the support team, and we have to escalate it up to our engineers. They can go back up to a total of 18 months, so 6 months more. Anything beyond that, we're not going to be able to get. So if you need your call log data for some sort of compliance reasons, you definitely want to do this on a monthly basis. Feature codes, I've talked about a couple of these. These are a way for your VoIP phone users to directly access VoIP or Dash features directly from their VoIP phone. This is a page also on our support pages. Also on the support pages, there's the phone commands cheat sheet, which will have like this context help next to it, so a little bit easier to use. That's the dashboard. So let's go up here to blacklists. So this blacklist allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you're blocking from reaching your system. You click on Edit Blacklist. You either click on Add to create a new one, or click on an existing list. For a new one, you need to give it a name, and then are you blocking anonymous calls or not? By default, it's off. Right? If I turn it on, that means anonymous calls, basically call comes in and we're not getting valid caller ID information. Right? We're not getting the full phone number. So if I turn it on, that means they don't get through. Right? So they get busy tone. If I turn it off, that means they get through. Then beyond that, down here, I click on add number. I put +1, area code and phone number. No spaces, dashes, or parentheses. I keep clicking add until I'm done adding numbers. And then when I'm done, I click on save. I go back to settings up here at the top right. I make sure that list is on the right-hand side under selected. Right, so you can click and drag as necessary. And then click update. And so now the numbers on these two lists are blocked from reaching my system. All right, faxes, this goes to your fax manager. It's an included feature. You can get to any fax box on the account. You start off on the inbound fax page. You see the date and the time involved, phone numbers involved. You can see the number of pages. You can download the file. If you have a lot of faxes, then you can click on the box in front of it to remove a fax. Outbound faxes. Oops, nothing there. Let's go to Aaron. All right, so you see the date, the time, phone numbers involved. If you see a failure here, that means we had a problem communicating with the other fax machine or the other fax number. Now, that could be something like the number was busy, or we did connect initially, but then something interrupted the transmission. The system will try to send a fax 3 times on its so when you send an email, it's going to try 3 times to try to get through. Email to fax logs. If you have information here, it's going to look like that with the thumbs down. You'll have the email address involved, right? So from and the to. If you click on the little eyeball icon here, this will tell you here that the problem was no valid attachment, right? So whatever was attached was not a PDF or TIFF file. And it could be something as simple as they forgot to send an attachment. Number Manager, this takes you to your spare numbers page. Reports, this is for advanced reporting. This will open up a new tab and take you to reports.virtualpbx.com. It has its own login, and there you can create your own reports. If you would like more information on this, because it doesn't show up here because of how the streaming software works, in the show notes, you want to click on the advanced reporting demo. It's going to have a YouTube demo of what's going on and how to make use of it. If you don't have this feature showing up and you want it, you need to talk to our account services team, as it's a plan-specific feature. Voicemails. This takes you to your voicemail box manager. You can get to any voicemail box on the account. You can see their voicemail messages, right? The date, the time, phone numbers involved. You can download the file. You can play it back. You have the option to move it to a different voicemail box or change its status. A call center. These are ACD queues. Under the show notes, you want to look at the ACD Queues Pro demo link there. So the call center, they're a more advanced version of the groups, right? So you have different routing options like round robin, which will equalize out over time, or most idle, who has been waiting the longest gets the next call. Queues also allow your staff members to log themselves in and out of the queue, like at the end of their shift, or as well as mark themselves away, like when they go to lunch, right? And then mark themselves ready when they're back. The queues also have, for managers, you can eavesdrop in on a call, right? So you can listen in on what's going on. You can whisper to your staff member to help them, or barge in and basically take over the call, which you cannot do with groups. Dynamic caller ID, this is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change the outbound caller ID for your VoIP phones. Right, normally you click on create rule, but I'm just going to edit an existing one. So you give it a name. Then you choose a phone number on your account that you want the system to use. And then you choose, in this case, I went with, whenever my staff members dial a 408 area code phone number, the system will automatically change their outbound caller ID to this 669 phone number. 408 and 669 are overlays for the same area. And then you click on Save Changes. Another alternative here is for LA. I chose a 323 phone number. And basically, whenever my staff members dial *550 from their phone, and then the area code phone number they're trying to call out to, the system will automatically change their phone number to be this 323 phone number. Monitor is another plan-specific feature. This allows you to see the status of your staff members. It doesn't matter what phone they're using. You can tell if they're on a call, right? Their box would be blue. You can switch between all available and who's busy. Up here, you can also go by employees or by devices. Over here, it's a little hard to read, but you can see active inbound calls. Each active inbound call will have a blue box and show you who they're speaking to. If there are any parked calls, they would show up here with the caller ID and the parking spot number. The recording manager, this will open up a new tab and take you to recordings.virtualpbx.com, which uses your dash login to log in. And that's where you would listen to your call recordings and download them or delete them. Webhooks, another plan-specific feature. Webhooks allows you to link your Dash account to another piece of software. As examples, you would want to go in the show notes, go to Intro to Zapier link. And Zapier is one of the ways to link Dash to other software. You can also go to developer.virtualpbx.com to see sample codes of how we've linked Dash to other software. If you're interested in this, you'd want to talk to our sales team as they have more information. This is programming to some degree. I'm sure for people who program for their living, this is a piece of cake. For someone like me who doesn't really program at all, this is like a different language. So again, just be aware this is not going to be something easy peasy for most people. And lastly, user portal. So every user on your account has access to their own user portal. It defaults to your voicemails. Now, if you set up a user's voicemail box to delete after notification, they won't have anything here ever, right? But otherwise, you see the date, the time. You can listen to it, you can download it, and the staff member, when they click on the box here, they can change its status. The call history tab shows their call history, right? Calls in and out. They can change the date range and then click filter to see a different time frame. The fax tab only works for users that have their own fax box, but then they can view their fax history, both in and out. The contact list tab shows everything on your Dash account, right? So this makes it easier for your staff members to transfer calls to other users or groups or even auto attendants. It's not something they can add to, right? This just shows what's on the account. The conference tab, this only shows up for users that have conferencing enabled. On the far right, this is where your staff members would adjust their PIN numbers, both for themselves as a moderator, as well as for their participants. They can choose to have people join deafened or muted, as well as play entry and exit tones. When they're actually in a conference, they can come to this page and click on the plus sign to add other Dash users to the conference. They can lock a conference so other people cannot join, mute everybody, unmute everybody, end the conference call. Also, while in a conference, each moderator and participant has their own box. So moderators can then mute a specific person or even kick out a specific person. And then we have the settings and devices tab. Right here is where your staff members can edit, adjust, or set up call forwarding themselves. Right, they just put a check mark there. They enter the phone number, right? +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and they click on save. Now, again, if they have their cell phone number as a device on their user already, they don't need to do this. And that is everything. I haven't seen any questions pop up, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I thank you for your time today. We will be back next Tuesday, which is the 27th at 10 a.m. Pacific, and also on the 29th, one of my colleagues will be handling the business SMS webinar. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.